Hello, friends. This is the first children's reading corner video. I've had it in my mind for a while to share some reading time and let others share in some reading time too. So this is likely to change formats, but I have to start somewhere. And I thought the best place to start is right here. And this is a story from the book called Holy Troublemakers and Unconventional Saints. And it has a lot in it, and they are kind of long stories. So it's hard to read this live to children because some children may not be able to last the whole time. Pearl is about to bark in the background because we have a delivery. On cue. But she's part of the fun. Harriet Tubman. The year is 1828. The place is Dorchester County, Maryland, on the plantation of Anthony and Mary Thompson. The sun isn't even up yet, but a young black girl of about 9 is already hard at work. She already has lit a fire, split firewood, and hauled pails of water inside. Now she is nervously shushing the little Thompson baby she is supposed to care for. She rocks his cradle and sings softly to him. Her name is Harriet. Her grandmother had been kidnapped from her home in West Africa and endured a long trip across the Atlantic Ocean in the hold of a ship. When she arrived, she was sold to a white plantation owner in Maryland. Harriet feels the unfairness sharply. The waking baby just wants to fill his belly with milk after a long night's sleep, but if he cries, his mother will blame Harriet, and being blamed means the baby's mother, Mary Thompson, will whip Harriet. One morning, Mary whipped Harriet 5 times before breakfast. Harriet can still feel the scars and remember the searing pain. This wasn't right. She knew deep down that it was wrong for her and her family to be forced to work for free every day of their lives. They lived in fear of violence with little to eat. Pearl is eating now. Little to keep them warm at night, and no hope for any change, just the fear that they could be sold to another plantation where the situation could be worse. This young girl will later be known as Harriet Tubman. At 9 years old, however, she was called Araminta, or Minty for short. Harriet was actually her mother's name that she adopted after she escaped slavery. Little Minty would grow up to become one of the most famous Americans of all time. Known for many daring and dangerous trips helping other enslaved people escape the cruelties of slavery through the network of safe houses known as the Underground Railroad. Minty's mother encouraged her to smile and be polite to slaveholders, hoping to keep her little daughter working the somewhat easier jobs indoors. Just smile and be polite to Master and Mrs., no matter what they do, Harriet's mother advises her. But Harriet can't bring herself to pretend to be happy at all times in the house. Her older sister can play the part without revealing her true feelings. But Harriet always had a spark deep in her bones that resisted. The law might say she is the property of Anthony and Mary Thompson, but she knows it isn't right for any person to be owned by another person. She knows she should be free, even though she doesn't have the words for that idea yet. The slaveholders can sense this resistance in Harriet, and they keep finding reasons to punish her and break her spirit. But her spark only grows brighter. When she was about 12, Harriet was sent to work in the plantation fields. The work was physically exhausting, and even though she was small, she became incredibly strong. She could drive a team of oxen all day. To help find a rhythm to work to, Harriet and the other enslaved people would sing. The overseer usually didn't pay attention to the words of their songs, but many of the songs were actually based on the stories from the Hebrew scriptures that tell of Moses leading the Jewish people out of slavery in Egypt with God's help. One of her favorite songs was Go Down, Moses. Go down, Moses, way down in Egypt's land. Tell old Pharaoh, let my people go. When Israel was in Egypt's land, let my people go. Oppressed so hard they could not stand, let my people go. No more shall they in bondage toil, let my people go. Let them come out with Egypt's spoil, let my people go. Another favorite song was also about freedom. Didn't my Lord deliver Daniel? Didn't my Lord deliver Daniel? Didn't my Lord deliver Daniel? Why not every man? He delivered Daniel from the lion's den, Jonah from the belly of the whale, and the Hebrew children from the fiery furnace. Why not every man? When Harriet sang these songs with dozens of other enslaved people working hard under the intense sun, she vowed to herself that one day she would be free. She later said, I had reasoned this out in my mind. There was one of two things I had a right to: liberty or death. If I could not have one, I would have the other. Harriet's father, Ben, could see what Harriet was thinking. He also knew the entire situation was unjust and cruel. He also knew how dangerous it was for an enslaved person to try to escape. If she was ever going to have a chance to survive, she needed to know how to navigate in the woods. She especially needed to know how to go north because the northern states were the free states. He began taking her on long walks on Sundays in the woods that he had been working in since he was a small boy. Look at the moss on that tree, he told Harriet. The moss grows on the north side of the tree. Harriet's father also taught her which berries and roots in the woods were safe to eat. He taught her how to hide in the undergrowth and be perfectly still. He taught her how to read the animal tracks and how to walk in a creek to avoid leaving a scent that dogs can follow. Most importantly, he taught her which star in the sky was the North Star. Harriet began to think of the North Star as a special sign set in heavens by God to guide her. To her, the North Star meant that God wanted her and all enslaved people to be free. Moss by day and North Star by night, her father kept telling her. You can always find your way north that way. When Harriet was a young teenager, she almost died from a head injury. She was in the local dry goods store and on an errand, and an angry overseer came in because one of the enslaved men from the plantation he worked on was in the store without permission. The overseer yelled at Harriet, "Hold him!" But Harriet did the opposite. She stepped in between the angry overseer and the enslaved man. The overseer's anger boiled into rage, and he picked up a 2-pound weight and threw it. Harriet was struck on the head. Blood began gushing from her wound, and she passed out. Her skull had been cracked by the attack. Her slaveholders just kept her in a corner without any medical care for 2 days. Eventually, someone carried Harriet to her parents' small cabin, thinking surely she would die. Fortunately, she lived. Harriet's mother gradually nursed her back to health over several months, giving Harriet most of her own food rations and making herbal remedies brewed from roots she knew had medicinal properties. While Harriet survived her injuries, they left her permanently disabled. For the rest of her life, she suffered from severe headaches and sudden sleeping spells called narcolepsy. She could fall asleep at any time while sweeping the floor or mid-conversation without any warning. Later on, wanted posters advertising for her capture included the description, "Has a habit of abruptly falling asleep." Harriet returned to the fields knowing that the plantation owners did not like her and would sell her if they could. After a while, she married a free black man named John Tubman, but he didn't share her passion for going north. He thought it would be impossible for Harriet to escape, and he did not have the fire burning inside of him like she did. Then something happened in the summer of 1849 to speed up Harriet's plan. Her plantation owner died. Harriet knew that she now would be sold. Harriet had heard from other enslaved people that some white people also knew that slavery was wrong. They were called abolitionists because they wanted to abolish slavery. At first, Harriet was astonished. Then she learned more about them. Most abolitionists lived in the northern states, and there's a reason for that. Growing cotton, tobacco, and other plantation crops required lots of workers. If these workers had been paid even a small wage, southern plantations could not have made money. So southern white people who reaped huge financial benefits from having an unpaid enslaved workforce were rarely willing or able to acknowledge that slavery was an unjust, evil practice. But even in the South, Harriet had heard there were abolitionists who practiced the Quaker religion. At that time, Quakers dressed very simply, usually in gray and white. They also had a more formal style of speech that used thee and thou. One day at the market, Harriet spotted a Quaker woman. She decided to risk going to the woman's house to see if she could find out if she might be a safe white person to trust. The first thing the woman said when Harriet knocked on her door put Harriet at ease. Thee is most welcome here. If I were thee, continued the Quaker woman, I'd first follow the Choptank River to its source. Then I'd walk inland and break my travels with a rest at Ezekiel Hunn's house in Camden. His house is set back from the road with green shutters and a red chimney. In this manner, the Quaker woman taught Harriet about the Underground Railroad, which wasn't a physical train with tracks, but a network of safe houses and people called conductors who would help escaping slaves on their journey with a place to rest, a warm meal, clothes, and directions to the next location or station. This was a secret collaboration to help escaping slaves originally started by William Sill, a free black man whose parents had escaped enslavement. Now everyone involved, including this kind Quaker woman, risked being imprisoned and fined large amounts of money if they were caught. They were breaking the law, but they knew it was an unjust one. Harriet left a few nights later, nervous but determined. She was going north to freedom. It was a perilous journey. Several times she got lost and found herself accidentally walking in a big circle. But she quieted her panic by remembering her father's instructions, Moss by day and North Star by night. She traveled by night as much as possible, looking up whenever she was in a clearing to find that bright, beckoning North Star. Just keep on following that star, she told herself. She hummed bits of the deliverance song she used to sing, which not only calmed her, but helped remind her of her deep belief that God meant for all people to be free. Whenever she could, she walked right down the middle of the creek to help hide her scent, because she knew that if the white slaveholders searching for her knew the area she was in, they would use hunting dogs to try to find her. With the instructions from the Quaker woman seared into her memory, Harriet found Ezekiel Hunn's house, the first safe house on her journey north. He and his wife, Eliza, gladly took her in, gave her a big breakfast, and put her to bed in their guest bedroom. Harriet had never been so grateful for a bed. She slept for a full day, but she wasn't safe yet. She still had at least 2 more days of traveling to get to the Pennsylvania state line, where she finally would be free. But there was a reward being offered for her return, and patrollers lurked everywhere. She had to be careful. After a short rest in another Underground Railroad house, Harriet started off for what she hoped was the final leg of this risky trip. She knew to look for a free black man who would be waiting to give her a ride across the bridge that was heavily guarded. Harriet tried to keep a sharp lookout, but one of her sudden sleeping spells overtook her. Luckily, she was in a forested area and hidden, but she woke with a start, realizing that patrollers looking for her were nearby. They finally gave up, and she managed to find safety at the house of Thomas Garrett, another conductor on the Underground Railroad. He led her upstairs to a secret room hidden behind a bookcase. His shoe shop was underneath, so Harriet had to be still and quiet as possible. The next day, Harriet stepped over the line into Pennsylvania and felt her heart leap. She was finally free. Later, she described how she felt in that moment. I looked at my hands to see if I was still the same person now that I was free. There was such glory over everything. The sun shone like gold through the trees and over the fields, and I felt like I was in heaven. Harriet went to Philadelphia to find work. She worked hard every day doing laundry, baking pies, selling produce, and doing other jobs, but now she was free. She could decide for herself where to live, whom to work for, and what to do with her precious little free time. But Harriet wasn't content just being free herself. She missed her family and she worried that her siblings might get sold further south. And so, despite enormous risks, Harriet became a conductor on the Underground Railroad. She returned to Maryland in the fall of 1850 to help her brothers escape. Ultimately, Harriet returned to the South 13 times to help enslaved people escape, and she led between 70 and 300 people to freedom. She gave countless others directions and advice on how to find the Underground Railroad's safe houses. She was the first woman to become a conductor on the Underground Railroad, and she was also the most successful. Later, she liked to say, "I never lost a passenger." Harriet became known as Moses because she led enslaved people to freedom just like Moses did. She used songs commonly sung by enslaved people, songs which are now called spirituals, as secret signals. All of the enslaved people on the plantations where Harriet traveled knew these songs too. They had sung them daily as motivation and rhythm aids while they worked together, and as symbols of solidarity. These songs never raised the suspicion of the white overseers because they thought that singing slaves meant happy slaves. The overseer didn't realize that right under his nose, enslaved people were planning their escape. Songs like "Go Down Moses," "Follow the Drinking Gourd," and "Steal Away Jesus," and "Swing Low, Sweet Chariot" all contained coded messages. The home or heaven was the North or Canada. Egypt meant the slave states of the South, and Moses was Harriet, whose reputation grew in legend on every trip. The reward for her capture grew with every trip also. So Harriet kept coming up with disguises and new ideas for escapes. She still had to deal with the effects of her head injury, but she kept returning to Egypt to lead more people to freedom and the promised land. She felt that God had called her to this task and had imbued her with special gifts and protections. She'd hide in the woods near enslaved people's cabins or next to a field and sing a verse from a song like "Swing Low, Sweet Chariot." Swing low, sweet chariot, coming for to carry me home. Swing low, sweet chariot, coming for to carry me home. Then she'd pause for a moment. A voice, sometimes two or three, would sing the next verse. Then the word would spread that Harriet was ready to lead a trip north. She'd come back at night and she'd start off again on the journey north with her new passengers. When the Fugitive Slave Act of 1850 passed, it became law in the entire U.S. that an escaped slave in any state could be taken back to the South. That meant Harriet had to conduct her passengers all the way north to Canada. When the Civil War broke out in 1861, Harriet immediately offered her services to the Union Army. At first, she was a cook and a nurse. Her knowledge of herbal remedies that she learned from her mother and used frequently in the woods while leading people to safety helped her to save countless Union soldiers who were ill from infections and injuries. Soon, she was able to use her immense knowledge of the woods and ability to gain valuable information as a spy and a scout. She became the first woman to lead an armed raid for the U.S. when she led Union soldiers along the Combahee River deep into Confederate territory in South Carolina, where 700 enslaved people were freed, many of whom joined the Union Army as soldiers. After that war, Harriet settled in Auburn, New York. She cared for her aging parents as well as anyone who was in need, even though she herself had very little money. She grew produce to sell and took any other job she could earn income. Her time working in the Army had not been documented formally, so While she deserved a veteran's pension, she had to fight for more than 30 years to get paid all that she was owed by the US government. It finally took an act of Congress and the influence of many friends with government connections to get even part of what the government owed her. Harriet never stopped working for equality and freedom for everyone. After the Civil War, she worked to give women the right to vote and to improve the lives of newly emancipated, formerly enslaved people, especially those who were elderly. In 1896, with the help of African Methodist Episcopal Zion Church, she purchased land near her house to open the Tubman Home for Aged and Indigent Negroes. When she became too old to live on her own, she moved into the home herself. Harriet died in 1913, surrounded by people who loved and appreciated her. Even on her deathbed, Harriet was thinking of others. As she neared death, Harriet told the gathered group, "I go to prepare a place for you." Harriet is buried in Auburn, New York, at the Fort Hill Cemetery and received full military honors. She's become a symbol of astounding courage and determination. In 2016, the U.S. Treasury announced plans to put Harriet's portrait on the $20 bill. She would be the first African American person ever to be on paper money in the U.S. and the first woman in 100 years. And this story leaves us with a question. What are some ways you could help others to be free? And I will leave you with that question. Until next time, goodbye.